The Reaper. What if Izuku is part of the Assassination classroom? By Ray of Frost. Chapter 11. The First Day. Izuku and Hitoshi had a very funny idea. A very, very funny idea. Now for their classmates. Shoto couldn't stop thinking about the girl he met at the club. The words she had said to him had flipped everything he thought he knew on its head. It was his power, not his father's, and not his mother's either. Shoto decided to take the girl's advice to heart and began training both parts of his quirk. He also decided to completely ignore his father. That had done wonders for his mental health. Shoto was the second person to enter the classroom. The only other person in the room was a tall, blue-haired boy with glasses. Shoto took a seat in the back of the class and waited for the rest of his classmates to show up. The heterochromatic boy zoned out as his classmates began trickling in. Suddenly, a shock of fluffy purple hair and long curly green hair caught his attention. It was the girl and her boyfriend? Was that her boyfriend or just a friend? Shoto wasn't sure. And there was that weird feeling in his gut that his sister said was probably jealousy. The girl and the tired purple-haired boy that accompanied her took the two seats between him and the window. The girl sat right next to him. Her curly forest green hair bobbed as she plopped into her seat. A light dusting of freckles highlighted her cheeks, and her viridian eyes sparkled like gemstones. She turned to him, and her face lit up with recognition. That's when Shoto realized he was staring at her. "Hey, Hido! It's Todoroki-kun!" the girl, Izuku, cheered. Izuku was an interesting name for a girl. It is. Why am I not surprised? The boy sighed, turning his gaze to Shoto. "Hello, I'm Hitoshi Shinzo," he greeted. "Hello, Shinzo. I am Shoto Todoroki." The group stared at each other in awkward silence. "So, how long have you two been dating?" There was complete serious in the dual-haired teen's voice. Izuku's face started turning red, stuttering and stammering. So Hitoshi took the opportunity to answer. 9 months, he said, matching Shoto's seriousness. Izuku whipped his head around to glare at Hitoshi, a look that said, "What the hell? Why?" The glare's message and target suddenly changed as a sharp hiss emanated from Izuku's teeth. The new target was a short boy with purple balls for hair. The boy was the height of a toddler and was currently attempting to look up Izuku's skirt. 3E had its fair share of perverts, including their teacher, but none of them ever went as far as to violate a classmate. The toddler-sized boy didn't have the chance. A loud thud silenced the now full classroom as the perverted boy slammed into the whiteboard at the front of the classroom. Izuku didn't need to use his quirk to punt the boy. He had no muscle mass, so it was like kicking a football. Izuku silently returned to his seat as the class stared at the boy in shock. "Wait, isn't that the boy that tried to grab my butt in the hall?" one of the girls piped up. A few other girls murmured in agreement. Izuku and Hitoshi remained silent. Hitoshi made eye contact with the man in the entryway and nodded. It took another 8 minutes for someone else to notice the man sitting in the sleeping bag in the doorway. The girl who saw him, who happened to be the girl Izuku saved during the entrance exam, shrieked, getting the attention of the rest of the classmates. That was the man's cue to rise from his yellow cocoon and introduce himself. "I am your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa." The exhausted man was about to continue when he was suddenly cut off. "Holy crap! Eraserhead is our homeroom teacher. Izu, Eraser is our homeroom teacher. Hito, this is the second best day of my life. Well, great, the Underground Pro thought to himself. I have fans, and they're both in my homeroom. This is gonna be a long 3 years. He groaned and grabbed some gym uniforms out of his sleeping bag. He chucked them at the students and said, "Grab one and meet me outside. Don't make me wait." As per usual, students began protesting the decision. Most asked a bunch of random questions, and one girl asked about orientation. Aizawa was about to shut them down when the 2 students sitting in the back of the classroom lunged from their seats. They dashed to the pile of gym uniforms, quickly finding ones their size, and bolted out of the room. "Hey, wait up!" one of the students yelled after them, causing a rush of students trying to find their gym uniforms and follow the 2. By the time the uniforms were sorted through, and the class made it to the locker room, the 2 were already long gone. All Shota could do was sigh. The kids that rushed out of the class had somehow beaten him to the field, and now they stood at attention like soldiers awaiting orders. They were alert, and their backs were perfectly straight. They maintained that position as the rest of Class 1A trickled onto the field. Some students were confused and tried to mimic their posture, standing beside them awkwardly. Others simply ignored them. I have already identified this year's problem, children. The pro hero tossed a softball to the blonde kid, Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo, you got the most villain points. What was your score for the ball throw in middle school? 43 meters, the blonde replied, voice dripping with arrogance. The standard fitness tests organized by the government won't let you utilize your quirks. So try throwing the ball with your quirk. Do whatever you want, just don't leave the circle. Bakugo grunted and entered the circle. He rolled his shoulders and cocked his arms back in a pitcher stance. Little pops came from the blonde's hands as he activated his quirk. Die! He yelled as he launched the ball, backed by a massive explosion. The students stood silently as they watched the ball fly through the air. After 5 seconds, the ball hit the ground, and a beep came from Aizawa's phone. The teacher showed his phone to the class as it displayed the distance of Bakugo's throw. 752 meters, he announced. This test is to help me gauge your potential, so I expect you to do your best. Ooh, we get to use our quirks! This will be so much fun! A girl with pink skin and little horns cheered. Oh, you think this will be fun? Aizawa pushed his unkempt hair out of his face and gave the class a grin that seemed eerily familiar to Izuku. Wait, that's how Toshi smiles. Weird. Most of the students were unnerved by the sudden tone shift. If you think this will be fun, then how about this? I'll expel whoever I deem as having 0 potential, namely, last place. The students were in an uproar. Wait, he can really do that? Oh no. What are we gonna do now? How's that fair? He's bluffing, right? The class went on with their string of unbelieving questions. He's not bluffing. The class fell silent at Hitoshi's declaration. Mr. Aizawa is known for his high expulsion rate. Once he expelled an entire class worth of hero students in a single day, Izuku added. But it's the first day! How is that fair? The girl with the strange finger pads asked. The world isn't fair. Natural disasters, diseases, quirk discrimination, villain attacks, none of that's fair. But they're everyday occurrences, Hitoshi drawled. Exactly. Aizawa took back control of the conversation before it could get too far off track. And it's a hero's job to fix some of that unfairness. Villains won't give you the time to mess around. You need to put your all into training, so you're ready when you get your licenses. Aizawa has come to a conclusion. Izuku Midoriya and Hitoshi Shinzo are way too skilled to be ordinary teens. Neither of them have used their quirk, but they've dominated the fitness tests. As Hitoshi's quirk can't really help him with physical tests, but Izuku's can. When the pro asked the boy why he didn't use his quirk, he expected it was because he was registered as quirkless until shortly after the entrance exam, but that was not the response he got. I wanted to challenge myself. I'd crush these tests if I used my quirk, and I know I'll do fine without it, Izuku answered with a smile. Very well then, but I want you to redo a few of them with your quirk after we're done, the teacher conceded. Shota had many questions. How did Midoriya and Shinzo get 3rd and 4th place without using a quirk? What kind of hellish training did they go through? How was Shinzo flexible enough to fold himself in half in the seated toe touches? How did Midoriya have a stronger grip strength than the student with 6 arms? How did the greenette keep up with the scooter Yayorozu made with her quirk during the endurance run? Why did Midoriya's smile give him the same feeling as sitting in Nezu's office? Why did God always give him the problem children? In the auditorium, Nezu sneezed. Aizawa must be cursing my name again. The rat god chuckled before returning to his orientation speech. Shota was done. The problem child has a strength-enhancing quirk on top of his ridiculous base strength. What the hell? The worst part of that was he didn't know it existed until after the entrance exam, making him the first person to pass the hero course entrance exam quirkless. Quirkless. And now he has an overpowered quirk too. The world is doomed. Nobody was expelled that day. Everyone had at least one way to use their quirk creatively, except the problem children. They didn't need their quirks to have more potential than most of their classmates. Chapter 12. Combat Training. The combat exercise was stupidly simple, but All Might still used note cards to explain it. He may be the #1 hero, but he sucks at being a teacher. Bakugo ignored most of the explanation, opting to glare at the greenette instead. How had Deku gotten into UA? When did he get a quirk? Is the nerd looking down on him? Who's the guy he's always with? Why do they have matching hero costumes? Each unanswered question only made him angrier. Bakugo's costume was perfect for him. Just as explosive as his quirk and personality. The hair pieces were modeled after comic book explosions, and the entire ensemble, comprised of reddish oranges and army green accents over black, was put together with murder in mind. Combat boots, grenades, baggy pants, and a giant axe across his chest. It was an intimidating sight. Deku took after their hobo-looking homeroom teacher. He looked unassuming at first glance. Simple-looking, deep forest green combat boots with cleat-like treads adorned his feet. Black workout pants were fastened by a brown belt. On his face was what looked like a black surgical mask, but upon further inspection, it turned out to be made of a plastic-like material. Reflective goggles covered his viridian eyes, and his hair was tied back in a half-up, half-down do, with a white ribbon. The weirdest part was the reversible hooded jacket. It was forest green, like his boots, and had at least a dozen zipper pockets. The hood had bunny ears sticking from the top. When the jacket was reversed, it could zip shut, and when it was zipped, it was indistinguishable from a regular hoodie. Underneath the jacket was a plain white shirt and a harness. Attached to the harness were a telescoping staff, 2 cattle prods, and a grappling gun. The purple-haired freak that hung out with Deku had a similar outfit, but a dark bluish purple instead of green, cat ears instead of bunny ears, and guns instead of cattle prods. They both had the costume side of their jackets exposed. If they wanted to blend into a crowd, all they would have to do is put their goggles into one of their many pockets and reverse their jackets. The jackets were the surprise Hawks mentioned. Originally, they were just going to wear civilian clothes over the suit Koro Sensei made them, and a harness for their weapons. They still could do that if they needed to go undercover, but the jackets would be helpful for patrols. All Might finally finished his stupid explanation and split the class into teams for a 2v2 battle exercise. One team would be the villains, tasked with protecting a papier-mâché bomb in an office building, and the other team would be the heroes, who had to retrieve the bomb within a 15-minute time limit. If one team could capture the other or incapacitate the other, that would also count as a win. The first match was the Tail Boy and Deku's purple-haired boyfriend against the half-and-half bastard and the 6-armed freak. The match was over within the first 2 minutes. It started with half-and-half freezing the entire building. The whole thing in seconds. Tail Guy was frozen to the floor. That's what it gets for fighting barefoot. Purple Freak somehow dodged the wave of ice. The spiked treads on his stupid boots let him run across the ice unhindered. Half and Half assumed that his attack immobilized both of his opponents, so his face was plastered with a foolish expression when Purple Freak shot one of his pressure points from the rafters. Rubber bullets were non-lethal, but they can still leave bruises. Needless to say, Half and Half dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Then Purple Freak jumped out of the 3rd-story window and tackled 6 arms from that height. Ponytail says that Purple Freak was the MVP of that match, for obvious reasons. He didn't even use his quirk. The rest of the matches were dumb and boring. Bakugo's match was one of the last 3. Finally! You gotta crush that nerd! His match was him and Round Face as the heroes and Deku and Four Eyes as the villains. Bakugo stood outside the fake office building, waiting for the villain team to finish their preparations while Roundface tried making small talk with him. Roundface's costume didn't suit her at all. The costume designer was either sexist or stupid. Probably both. He could make better, and that is disregarding the fact that his parents are fashion designers. How were the girls supposed to fight in skin-tight spandex suits and high-heeled boots? Forget how uncomfortable that must be. There is no armor or padding. What little armor there is clunky and accentuates curves instead of actually protecting anything. These are 15-year-olds, for God's sake. He would have to have a word with the support companies, or at least get the girls better costumes. There's no point in being the best if half the competitors are hampered by poorly made costumes. Bakugo's internal rant about the idiotic costume designs is cut short by All Might announcing the match's start. The chronically angry blonde launched into the building without a second glance. Not even 10 feet in the door, he hits a tripwire and is propelled face first into the floor. Deku! He screams in rage. He thrashed about in an attempt to free his leg from the fishing line that tripped him, but he only got tangled in even more fishing lines. He howled and tried to escape, his quirk activating in an attempt to blow up the invisible plastic thread. He managed to snap some of the wires, but that only yielded more problems. Small pouches fell from the ceiling, filling the room with smoke. No, a fine powder. Bakugo launched another explosion in an attempt to clear the room, but that just ignited the powder. The powder burned quick and brightly. A bright white flash illuminated the entire first floor for a split second. Bakugo's explosions and screams of anger could be heard from the observation room as he kept falling into trap after trap. Ochako Uraraka wanted to help her teammate, but there was no way for her to get to him through all the explosions, smokescreen, and traps. Instead, she tried to get into the building a different way. She used her quirk to scale to the top of the building. She entered the 5th floor with 7 minutes left to grab the bomb. The entire floor was open and empty. The boy who saved her during the entrance exam and the boy with engine legs stood on either side of the bomb. She tried her best to sneak up on the duo, but the boy with the engine legs was really getting into his villain monologue. She couldn't help but laugh. Oops, there goes my cover. Maybe it wasn't the wisest idea to attempt fighting 2 of her classmates at the same time. It took a lot of effort, but she finally got close enough to the boy with engine legs. His name was Tenya Ida, to use her quirk. Ida wasn't used to maneuvering without gravity, so he spun head over heels until he crashed into a wall, knocking him out. The green hat was far harder to pin down, even after she activated her quirk on him. He activated his quirk, electricity sparking off his body as he bounced around the room like a pinball. She had to be extra careful to avoid his staff. When did he get a staff? Izuku had been having strange dreams ever since he got his quirk. 8 ghostly figures would appear and whisper to him. Many of them were shocked or scared by his sudden appearance. One of them, the one with raggedy clothing and white hair, reached out to him. "Aren't you an interesting one, Ninth?" he said. "Prepare for the singularity. Nothing can stop it now. Prepare yourself." Izuku would reach back to the man, and then he'd wake up. Electricity from his quirk still bouncing off his skin. Was this part of the singularity he spoke of? The girl he saved during the entrance exam, Uraraka, was wrapped up in black tendrils that shot from his wrists. She almost reached the bomb, and all he could think about was the ways to stop her. Then they appeared. Stopped in her tracks, she released her quirk in shock. Izuku leaned back from his perch in the rafters, pulling Uraraka up as he fell back to the ground. He couldn't reach for any of his weapons, so he just held her in the air until time ran out. This is really weird. The two waited in awkward silence as Bakugo and his angry explosion shook the building. After a couple minutes, time ran out, and the villain team won. In those 2 minutes, Izuku thought of many ways to utilize this new aspect of his quirk. He got the feeling things would only get weirder from there. That night, he dreamed of the 5th user, and he explained the quirk. The black tendrils were called Black Whip. They were 5th's quirk. They responded to his desire to stop the girl from reaching the bomb. They are fueled by his emotions, particularly rage. The angrier he is, the stronger and harder to control they'll be. Also, he'll eventually end up with all the previous users' quirks. Wait, say that again? And then he woke up. Damn it. Enjoy some bloopers, courtesy of my pets. Izuku and Hitoshi had a very funny idea. A very, very funny idea. Ochi! No! Cat! Get off the microphone. The student stood silently. Say that 10 times fast. The student stood... Cat. Meow. Meow. Can you let me record? Can you let me record the video? Mochi, can you let me record the video, or are you gonna be a little pain? Ow! That's my hand. Cat, you can't eat the microphone. I know you want to, but you cannot eat the microphone. Mochi, what? I am still recording. It has been 4 minutes. Mochi. Cat. Okay, if you promise to be quiet, you can stay. The girl and the tired purple-haired... Cat! I told you to behave!